Welcome back to Divot, a community for people trying to make their mark on the world, where each week I'm interviewing some of the best minds in business, sports, tech, and entertainment to learn how they've made their mark. Go to divot.org, see all the episodes, to suggest speakers or products we should look at, or any other feedback you have. If you've missed any episodes, you can find them on X or Spotify or YouTube or Apple Podcasts.
Divot.
This episode is brought to you by Salesforce.
In today's interview, we're in Palo Alto. We're gonna hang out with somebody you may not have heard of, but definitely has made a big mark. Greg Osborne is a retired real estate developer. He's helped some of the biggest companies like Google, Next Computers, Sun Microsystems, Intuit, and Activision to get their start. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's an alumni of the Stanford basketball team. He's had over 20 surgeries. He's like part android, and you could probably still do more push-ups than any of us. Greg's one of the most interesting and enjoyable people I've ever met, and I'm really excited for you to meet him too.
Well, it's full of a lot of different stuff. It's a blacksmith shop. I have a lathe over there that turns wooden bowls. I've got an oxyacetylene torch and a lot of propane. So if a plane ever hit this garage, it'd be a problem. It'd be a problem in Palo Alto. When I learned blacksmithing, it was always on coal forges. But if somebody in Palo Alto sniffed coal burning, they're like, it's got to be toxic. That's got to be not good. I got to call the city. And in 10 minutes, there'd be some official out here saying, what are you doing? We can't do that here. So it's propane.
How much time do you think you've spent in here over the years? When did you move to this house?
We bought this house in 1979.
Okay.
That is 46 years ago. We've been in the same house. It was a one-story house, but we added the second story.
Okay.
Which anywhere else in the country you would never do. You just sell that one and buy a two-story house. But here, it was worth adding the second story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what, were you in here? You feel like you're in here every week for 46 years? Have you spent a lot of full days in here? Or you?
Well, not full days. We had 5 kids.
Yeah.
And the boys are all makers. And so we were out here in the garage making stuff a lot. All the camping gear's in here. When the kids were really small, once a month, I would take them Friday after school and we'd go camping. I know every campground within an hour's drive of Palo Alto, every single one. And they had color-coded little duffel bags, and a toothbrush was color-coded to the duffel bag. And so
logical.
All they had to do was just put their clothes for overnight in there and their toothbrush, and we were out of here. I built this box. I told you I was kind of a maker guy. So I had a 4x8 sheet of plywood, cut it in half, so a 4-foot square. And I made this box that we could go camping in. And when you set it up like this, the top would fold down and that would be the table. And then it was designed so, the drawer organizers for like spoons and forks and knives.
Yeah.
I had these little shelves so you could slide the drawer organizer in there and another shelf with spices, and you could turn the box upside down and backwards and shake it and nothing would get disorganized. And so we had all the little propane bottles, everything. So all I had to do was throw that in the van, put the kids in there, and we'd leave Friday after school. Candace would probably go to sleep about 5 o'clock and sleep until 10 the next morning. And we would come back Saturday night and it was so fun.
Why'd you do that?
It was so fun to go camping.
Yeah.
It was just fun. And I used to take popsicle sticks and tongue depressors and a lot of glue and Estes rockets and fishing stuff. And we would just go out, and if the kids spilled, we're camping, right? So we'd go camping and, throw rocks and stay up and have campfires and make stuff and cook stuff. And we had this tent. I still have a piece of it somewhere. It was called Hillary, and it was canvas that had been impregnated with this stuff. It was 10 feet by 13 feet, and it had like 50 poles.
Didn't just you couldn't.
No,
it's
no,
not one of
no,
those,
no,
you just
no.
pull up and it just inflates.
That's today's wussy camping people. Let me have 2 poles, and in 30 seconds it pops up, and there's your tent. No. And so we had engraved on each one, side pole number 1 and 2 and 3, and we'd go there, and it probably weighed 50 pounds.
Yeah.
So it was always car camping. And we'd set up the tent, and it was 10 by 13. You could stand up in it. And finally, after probably 5 or 6 years ago, when we were having grandkids,
Yeah.
I mean, the zipper was broken. And so I went to throw it away, but I cut the word Hillary out of the side of it. That was the name of the tent, was Hillary. And so
I remember I've camped with you and your grandkids, and what I remember, first of all, it's like one of these like tents that you host events in. It's this huge mega, tent.
Yeah.
And we put our tent right next to yours, and this is what I remember from camping with you. My son, who at the time was probably like 2.5, and as soon as like it gets quiet, like I try to like get in the tent early as my kids before everybody else, so it's like,
calm down.
it's calmed down a little bit, but I didn't, and he starts freaking out. He doesn't even speak English at this point, right? Like he's really young, and he's screaming for something and his mom's not there. There's no cell reception. I can't like get it on, on audio to try to get the translator to figure out what this is. Anyways, after 30 minutes of screaming, saying the same thing, I finally understand that he's saying he wants a peanut butter sandwich, which we had. And I hand it to him and just shoves that thing in his face, sleeps with it. It's all over everything the next morning, but at least he was quiet. And then we came out of the tent the next morning, and I remember you look at him and you go, "Oh, Asher, were you here last night?" It was like, it seems like the camping, I don't know, that seems like a really incredible thing to do with your kids. Like, I bet I don't know, do they talk about it? Are they glad that they did it? Do they joke about it? Is it positive? Is it negative?
If our kids were sitting around like a little campfire, we have a big brazier, and every once in a while, when it's okay to have an outdoor fire in Palo Alto, we just fire it up and put the Elijah water on it. You know what that is, don't you?
No. What's
you
Elijah
know this
water?
Old Testament story?
Well, I know who Elijah is.
Okay, he came down, he burned up all this stuff.
Yeah, I know the story.
We got Elijah water. It's just charcoal lighter. So you just soak all the wood down and throw in a match, and you got a fire. But
is that how he did that?
I don't think
Did he have lighter fluid?
I don't think Elijah did it that way. He had a different connection. But I mean, if my kids were talking about it, they would tell 100 stories.
Yeah.
They would, just rain, shine, whatever. Estes rockets. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere and you shoot a rocket 500 feet in the air, and a parachute comes out, and then kids all run and find it and do another one, and
just building stuff. What do you like when you think about making stuff? You're a builder, you're a maker. Like, how do you think about, like, why do you build stuff? Why do you make stuff?
Well, some of the things I do because I want to fix something.
Yeah.
Like that pan right there. Did I show you that? Hand that to me.
That's it.
Yeah. So this is just a Staub pan. It's called the All Everything pan. But the sides are curved.
Okay.
And when I had a wooden spatula, when you scrape the side, like this, there's a gap because the edge of the wooden spatula is flat.
Flat, yeah.
And so when it touches here and here, you can't scrape the food out.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's not right. I mean, let's make wooden spatulas for 100 years the same way. So I said, I'm going to make a different spatula. So I turned this up like this, and I got a big light, and I shined it on it, and a piece of paper, I traced the curve of this. And then I took a wooden spatula like this, and I made this curve. That's the left. And then I made one like that for the right. So you have 2 spatulas, and when you scrape that, there's no food left. It all comes in a little pile right here. And so that's how you make stuff. I mean, and
It's kind of obvious now that you explain it, but I mean, why not just buy? I mean,
They don't sell curved spatulas that match my favorite pan.
yeah,
So if you're doing stir fry, I mean, you're going to either get like a latex or a rubber spatula and scrape all over and waste all that time, or you can have
perfect. Solving problems.
I buy a lot of them, and people come in, if I'm making stuff, they say, "Oh man, where'd you get that?" And I said, "I made it." But I'll make you one in 5 minutes. So I come out and cut them one, and they go home with it. You can go home with one today.
I'd like one.
Yeah.
Or two. I'd like the pair.
Yeah, I know you got to have a left and a right.
Yeah.
Which is why wouldn't Sur La Table, I can't say that probably, or Williams Sonoma, go to their wooden spatula people in somewhere offshore and say, "Hey, I'd like a left one and a right one, curved to this pan." And now you buy two instead of one.
I assume it's because you lock down the intellectual property on it or something, being somebody from Palo Alto.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Not too intellectual, but and I do the same thing with welding. I have a plasma cutter, arc welder, a MIG welder. MIG is an acronym, metal inert gas. It has argon tank there and oxyacetylene torch, and so I make stuff that I need, and then I blacksmith and I make stuff and turn bowls. And so if I get bored of blacksmithing, then I turn wooden bowls. But the great thing about blacksmithing and wooden, I used to make furniture when we were young. We couldn't buy, when you're a student 50 years ago, you have cement blocks.
A lot of students are doing that today.
Cement blocks, and then you got this, and I said, I can do better than that. So, but if you make something out of wood, now you got to finish it. You got to sand it. You got to paint it. So, you're like, I'd rather make it than paint it. Although we used to have a paint booth in here, I'd hang plastic all over and we'd spray paint the furniture and stuff. But that was a pain. When you make something in the forge, when it comes out, have this little container of stuff that's got boiled linseed oil, beeswax, Bruce floor wax. Probably don't even make it anymore. It's a little concoction, and you just paint it on, wipe it off, and it's good forever. In a wooden bowl, when you turn the bowl and you sand it all down, then you just put on certain kinds of wax. Looks perfect in an hour. No finishing, no painting, no nothing. So the fun is in the making. So you got to be a maker. That's the fun part.
I think you're right. I mean, the times where I feel most energized is when I'm creating stuff or building stuff. And for me, it's software, but
it's the hand-eye
designing,
building. I once, a friend of ours, I think John Stevens, was a cardiac heart surgeon for years, but he had to put in about 12 hours a day to keep up his skills. And then for his family, he just stopped that and went to do business stuff. I had lunch with him, and I said, "What is your most fun thing?" He said, "Oh, the heart surgery," because it was my hands and my eye, and he had to think longitudinally. So if I suture this little thing, it's going to form a scar, and then the scar is going to shrink, and it's going to pull this tendon, and as it pulls this tendon, then this thing's going to drop down. So I have to think over time as this heals. And he loved working with his hands. I do the same thing. When you're blacksmithing, there's a sequence. So if you curve this and you need to pound here, this is in the way. So you say, okay, first I have to pound this, then I bend this, then I do that, and then I do this. But then as you're sleeping at night, you say, okay, I've got to make this thing in the morning. Then it come up and you think, I can do that a little differently. If I do this backwards and inside out, then and so your mind is going, and then your hands, and it's people don't make things anymore. They just buy it. If it wears out, they just throw it away.
Yeah. What do you do when you get those ideas in the middle of the night? You come down here, or do you?
No. I have a sketch pad.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. It's too cold.
Yeah, it's kind of chilly out here.
It's so chilly.
How did you end up here? Where did you grow up?
Oh, Indiana. I had two older sisters came here to Stanford, and then I came out in '66 to I went to Culver Military Academy, which was in this little teeny town.
What is that?
Culver.
Is that like what is that?
It's a prep school.
Prep school, okay.
But back in the day, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yeah.
It still is a very prestigious secondary school. We used to play Cranbrook, which is where Mitt Romney went to
Okay.
high school.
Fancy schools.
We loved playing Cranbrook because they were easily dominated.
They were not on the same,
No,
from the same part of town.
no. And actually at Culver, you know, now we're going to fast forward all these years later. There was a guy named Tom Siebel that did Siebel Systems and all this. And so I got in the real estate business, and I was having lunch with him prior to leasing him this building. He was in a little 10,000 square feet, and I had a 55,000 foot building I wanted to rent, and they were looking for space. So we're having lunch. Yeah, I said, well, Tom, where'd you go to high school? And he said, oh, I really, you know, it's in the Midwest. I said, well, where'd you go to high school? He said, well, I actually went to Shattuck Military Academy. And I said, oh, that's in Deerfield, Wisconsin. He said, how'd you know that? And I said, well, in my high school's trophy case, we had these deflated footballs, said 1907, CMA 66, Shattuck 0. And he said, oh, I said, I went to Culver Military Academy. Back in the day, but I started high school in 1962.
Okay.
And Culver Military Academy was like a mini West Point. I mean, we marched to, we had uniforms, we had ROTC, it was, but academics and sports was what it was, and competition was what it's all about. I started in 1962, and so that's 17 years after World War II. So all the faculty, they're all World War II veterans. You know, they had been through the war, and they said, hey, we're going to train the next generation of military leaders at this school. It was really incredible. Cool. But I remember before I even graduated from high school, in November, they always had a Gold Star ceremony. And that was where we would all march and stand in formation, and they would read the names of the Culver graduates that died in World War I, World War II, and Korea. And then I remember the names of guys I knew that had died in Vietnam already. I wasn't even out of high school. So when I graduated from high school in 1966 and came out here to Stanford to play basketball and go to school, I already knew guys that would already
died.
That already died in Vietnam. I hadn't even finished high school. There were guys I knew that were 2 years older.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it was a whole different deal. The draft, you had to register for the draft when you're 18, and they're drafting people to go to war.
What was that like? I mean, are you talking about it with your family and your parents? Is it like something you would try not to think about? Is it something you would think about?
No.
It was just part of life. It was just like,
well, hey, my dad was born in 1915. He went to Northwestern University and started as a freshman in 1933. He went 3 years to Northwestern, and that was during the Depression. And his fraternity brothers, he was living in a fraternity house, SAE house at Northwestern. I think that's where their headquarters was or something. And all these guys that had graduated were just hanging around the fraternity house. They didn't have jobs. He decided, I'm going to go to West Point. So my dad got an appointment to go to West Point. He started West Point in 1936, in the fall of 36, and he graduated in the class of 1940. And
when he was in World War II.
He was definitely in World War II. He was a bomber pilot. He was a lieutenant colonel after 3 years. So growing up, I mean, duty, honor, country, that was what we were all about. I had 2 older sisters, but you know, your grades were really important. Sports were important. And my My dad once said to me, you know, if you want to play sports in college, you better play football. You'll never make it in basketball.
Why do you say that?
Because there's like 60 guys on the football team and there's 15 on the basketball team.
Yeah.
So I played basketball 4 years at Stanford
How did you get on the basketball team there?
At Stanford?
Yeah. Is that what you came out? Were they, I mean, was this pre-recruiting? Is it like you show up and try out, or?
Well, I had two older sisters went to Stanford, and going to Culver Military Academy, I was kind of done with it was all male at that time.
Yeah.
There was a few faculty co-ed daughters that went to Culver, but my dad took me to West Point. We drove out to Air Force Academy, but I wasn't I needed a co-ed experience. So I came out to Stanford, and in those days, they had a freshman team and a varsity team. And so they had an announcement in the Stanford Daily that there was tryouts. And I thought, you know, I'm going to go watch that. And the first day I just watched from the stands, and I thought, these guys aren't that good. So I'm going to go out. So I made the freshman team, played my freshman year, had a great experience. And then my freshman year, there were 2 seniors on the varsity, which means the whole freshman team is going to be sophomores, and there's going to be 2 spots on the traveling team. You always traveled with 15. Probably had 20 on the roster, but traveled with 12, not 15. 5 forwards, 5 guards, and 2 centers. It's 12. And so I made the traveling team my sophomore year.
What position?
I was with the little people.
Guard?
Yeah.
Shooting? Point?
Well, in those days.
Everything?
Yeah, everything. But so those were the Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, he was there in the late 60s, yeah.
He was a year older. A year older. So he graduated in 69. I graduated in 70. They won the national championship all.
Yeah, John Wooden.
Johnny Wooden, South Bend Central High School coach, which is 30 miles from my hometown.
And that would have been like towards the end of his, I mean, he
No. Well, Bill Walton, all those.
Well, that was the next 5 years, but he'd already coached. I mean, he'd already coached for 20 years, right? Or something. I mean, was he what he's known as now, or was it
his
still?
First national championship was in 1964.
Okay.
That was Gail Goodrich and all those guys. So they won the national championship in 1966. They had no seniors on the team. So in 1967, the entire national championship UCLA team was back. They played the freshmen, which had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor, Sidney Wicks, Curtis Rowe, and the freshmen beat the varsity by 20.
Wow.
Poly Pavilion, preseason, packed. The freshmen beat the varsity that won the national championship the year before by 20 points. They were just unbelievable.
You played those guys?
Yeah, we played them, yeah.
How'd that go?
Not as well as
I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is like what, 7'7", 7'3" maybe?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
And you're playing at what, 6'2" or something, or?
Well, I'm 6'2", yeah, but our center was like 6'7".
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
No NIL back then, right? You weren't getting.
I thought, I mean, when we were on the road, we'd get a $20 bill. That's for lunch and breakfast. We always had training table for dinner.
Yeah.
And, in those days, you could get a hamburger meal for, $4. I thought, man, I got like $10 left over. I mean, it's like $10 left over in my pocket. It's unbelievable. So it was so fun. It was so fun. I just really, 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 I love practicing. I love the whole thing about it. But there's a price to pay later on when your body's falling apart and everything's kind of broken up and messed up. But it was really it was really an amazing time of year. It was the Pac-8, not the Pac-12, which is now gone. Pac-8 was Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, Stanford, UCLA, USC. That was the 8 teams. But I loved it. I loved it.
What, you don't play basketball anymore?
No, I don't. There was a funny interview with Michael Jordan. This is a couple of years ago. And they said, Michael, could you beat the NBA championship team? And he said, I mean, your Bulls team, your championship Bulls team. He said, it'd really be close, but I think we'd win. I said, why do you think it would be close? He said, well, we're all 60. It's like, yeah, but even at 60. But
do you feel that? I mean, do you feel that way? Do you still feel at times like I'm the 20-year-old person, or
no?
I mean, not at all.
No. I stopped playing basketball when I started playing tennis, because if I couldn't play at the level that I wanted to, then it's not like what I want to do.
And it's hard. I mean, basketball's like, I don't know. I felt like every time I played basketball, I would get injured or something. It's rough. It's rough on your ankles and knees. And you would know way more than I would. How many surgeries do you think you've had at this point? And on what? You're like part android, right? You're like part human, part machine.
Way more than part.
Like what? Where is the metal in you?
Just the metal?
I don't know. Like what?
Okay, we'll start from the top of my head.
Okay.
Broke my nose a bunch of times. So before I could graduate from Stanford, I could only breathe out of one side of my nose.
That doesn't sound normal.
So I said, hey, you got to fix this before I get out of here. So I had a rhinoplasty.
Okay.
Then I got fractured cheekbone, 6 spiral fractures of my skull, and a blowout fracture under this eye. And so I had surgery to fix all that. And then 30 years later, I had a detached retina in the same eye, so they put a piece of plastic around it and another piece of plastic behind it. Then left shoulder's been replaced, so it's a steel shoulder. Then I had a lot of knee operations, but both knees have been replaced twice. Both hips have been replaced. Steel plate in my left elbow with big screws in it and stuff like that. Cancer surgery from Vietnam, from Agent Orange. So got cancer from that. And then no surgery, but I did in a chainsaw accident. Well, a logging accident. I broke 4 ribs and 3 vertebrae. That's all good. I swim 3 days a week.
You should probably stay in the house more. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of a little bit, I mean, is it a coordination issue, or how are all these things happening?
They're all mechanical except for the cancer thing.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about that, where I'm not,
You mean, how did these happen?
Well, how are you getting, yeah, I mean, it seems kind of unlucky.
No.
Is it just normal? Is this what I should be, is this what I should be preparing for?
No, but, well, what the real problem with the knees was, you've heard of cortisone, right? Cortisone shots.
Yeah.
If you have tennis elbow, tennis shoulder, something like that, a doctor might give you a cortisone shot, maybe 1 or 2 in a year.
Yeah.
Okay, you with me? Every Thursday, my knees would have fluid in them. They would drain the fluid out.
This is while you're playing basketball or something?
This is at Stanford.
Yeah.
Every Thursday, they would drain the fluid out with a big syringe. They put the syringe in under your kneecap, suck the fluid out, unscrew the syringe, and then screw in another little one and shoot in Novocaine and cortisone every Thursday. Came Friday. We always played on Friday and Saturday night. Friday and Saturday night, you're like, this is magic, man. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Healed.
It's like perfect.
Jeez.
And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, by Thursday, you're like, man, I mean, this is stiff and, So
Wow.
That dissolves cartilage. But that was my junior year and my senior year. And so by the time I finished, there was like, a few
Nothing
years
left.
later, it's just bone on bone. And
Wow.
so they get replaced and stuff like that.
You upset about that?
No, they didn't know. They didn't know.
They did it.
It worked.
Yeah.
I think what are these? I mean, American people, they've been interviewed, hey, if you could go to Mars and be famous, but you would never come home, what percentage of people would say, I'm in? Like 30%. People are interviewed about the Olympics. If you could be an Olympic champion and you knew that like 10 years after the Olympics, you couldn't walk, would you do it? Like most people say, yeah, sure. I mean, that sounds cool. I did it because I love basketball. I mean, it was just fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
I mean, I've seen you go through a lot of different surgeries and ailments and all these things. I've never really heard you complain much about it, actually. I can't really recall you.
Right now, I'm swimming 7,500 yards a week. 3 days a week I swim.
Can I ask how old you're?
76.
Okay, I'm 42.
You got more runway.
It's not really fair to ask someone their age if you won't share your own age, so that's why I said. But okay, so 76.
Yeah,
Okay.
I lift weights 3 days a week and ride the Peloton 3 days a week and swim 3 days a week. And but I mean, how could you dunk a basketball?
Still on my list.
It's a lot of fun. Let me tell you, there's something about having a 36-inch vert, and you can go down 2 hands in the front, 2 hands in the back, left, right, whatever you want to do.
Is that Greg Osborne at Stanford?
Oh yeah. Yep. But you pay a price.
Yeah.
And you pay a price, but it's a lot of fun. I loved playing basketball. I love practicing. I didn't start, depending on, but I mostly played defense. And they have a press.
I feel like you're like the really aggressive rebounder, guard the best offensive guy, like frustrate them, smile in their face, shake their hand, and just frustrate them into the ground kind of player.
If you're playing UCLA and you're pretty sure you're going to lose
in the late 60s.
No, and you're pretty sure you're going to lose, what you want them to know is they were in a good fight.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, they have a press guide each year that the basketball department puts out, and they have a little profile of each student or each student athlete, each player. And I've got a big scrapbook in there somewhere. And one year Delmar said, if there's a dust up in practice, Osborne's usually in the middle of it. And that's kind of true. I didn't, He also said it was kind of interesting. You know what Chucks are, don't you? Converse All-Stars. I said to some kid the other day, I said, hey, you're wearing Chucks. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, Converse All-Stars. He said, why do you call them Chucks? I said, well, look on the label on the outside with the blue star. It says Chuck Taylor All-Stars, right? Chucks.
You're the original sneakerhead.
Yeah, well, Chuck Taylor was a Stanford guy, right? And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, Stanford used to have Converse was the shoe supplier. And then partway through my sophomore year, they switched to this German outfit called Adidas. And they were really bad. The soles would come off, but they finally got it right.
When did you realize you were going to be going to Vietnam?
Well, like I told you, I went to Culver Military Academy, and I had upperclassmen, guys that were older than me, that had already been killed. So the draft was in full bloom, and they were drafted. In those days, it wasn't a volunteer army. That happened in the 70s. But in the 60s, everybody's getting ready to go to war. So when I went to Stanford, in those days, they had an ROTC program, either a 2-year or a 4-year program. And I got in the 4-year program, but I didn't have to go my first 2 years because I already had a bunch of military training in high school. And I actually ended up being the head of the whole ROTC detachment at Stanford, the student head of it. We had a colonel that was a regular Army guy that was professor of military science and all that, but I was a student guy, which was kind of interesting. I was in the 2-year program, and I went to basic training in Fort Lewis, Washington, officers' basic training. There was maybe 1,500 guys there.
Yeah.
And the very first formation, when we're there, all these potential officers, this general comes out and he has a pair of matched 45 caliber pistols in this glass case. And he says, the number one graduate from this officer's basic training session will get this set of pistols.
Mm.
And you can have your choice of any branch of service in the Army. So there's, infantry, armor, artillery, air defense, those are the combat arms. And then you've got transportation and the Judge Advocate General Corps, Supply Corps, all kinds of different. I thought, well, that's kind of a cool thing to win those pistols. That'd be great. So I decided to
go get it.
I decided I'm going to try and real hard.
Yeah.
And you had tests all the time, written tests, physical tests, peer review, evaluations by your drill instructor, everything. At the end of the cycle, there were 4 of us that had perfect scores.
Mm.
I was one of the 4. I was pretty excited about that.
Wow.
I ran a.
So did you get?
We had to run a mile.
But he still only picked one winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to run a mile in combat boots, and I ran a 4:40 mile in combat boots. I was number 2 guy, and the guy I lost to was a miler at University of Oregon. He was an NC2A miler runner.
Was it in some ways like almost like life or death of like picking where you get to go or not?
Well, yeah, it's pretty important.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, there were 4 of us had these scores.
Mm.
And they're going to interview us. And one of the guys' father was a general in the Army on active duty. And so this board of officers there had a couple of majors and a general and, some other glitterati in there. And we were going to appear before the board. And individually, just one at a time. So I got up there and saluted him and all this stuff. And the guy says, well, so Osborne, you want to make the Army your career? I said, no, sir. I have a 2-year active duty commitment and an 8-year total commitment, 6 years in the Army Reserve, and that's what I'm going to do. So that kind of
It took your chances away.
Yeah, I came in number 2, and I got a little teeny medal like this, So they gave me this medal, but I was in the top. I was going to get my choice of duty. Assignment.
Yeah.
And so I got back to Stanford, and the professor of military science said, "Well, what branch of service do you want to get into?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to go in the Judge Advocate General Corps. That's the lawyers. You don't have to be a lawyer, but I thought that's pretty good." So I put in for that and came back infantry. Now the Vietnam War is like raging. Tet Offensive was 1968. By the time I graduated, there's already 30,000 guys that have been killed there.
Hmm.
We're talking 100 a week. 100 a week, year in and year out for 10 years. So comes back infantry, and I said, well, I was guaranteed my choice of branch. They said, well, submit it again. So I submitted again. Comes back artillery. I mean armor, which is another combat, like tanks. I'm like, this isn't really working. So I put in for the Quartermaster Corps, which is, supplies and running convoys and stuff. And that's what
They finally gave you that.
They gave me that.
Yeah.
So then I went to officers basic training in Fort Lee, Virginia. 350 officers in this officers basic training course. Guy gets up and he says, the number one guy here is going to get his choice of duty station anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. We will guarantee that's where we're going to assign you. What did I say? That sounds pretty good. So I tried real hard. Number one guy in my class. So I said to Major Model, he said, well, Osborne, where do you want to go? I said, I'd like to be assigned to Presidio in San Francisco. He said, great. You just have to sign up for one more year of active duty. So wait a minute. That's not what you said. That's not what you said. You said the number one guy gets a choice of duty station. I want to go to the San Francisco Presidio. He said, well, I'll send you there. Just sign up for another year. His job was to get the guys to extend. So I told all my other classmates, I said, this guy is out to...
Yeah, he's cheating, basically.
He's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
So we end up, I get a little medal for being the number one guy, which doesn't mean anything.
Still have those medals?
No, I don't even know. So then I was at Fort Lewis, Washington, and other guys that were in my quartermaster corps class, they're starting to get their orders to Vietnam. Mine aren't coming through. I was married to Candace. We'd been married a year, almost a year. I said, honey, I might not have to go. I don't know what's going on. About 2 months after guys got, then I get my orders to Vietnam. I compare them. I was the first guy in my class to get orders to Vietnam because Major Model was really unhappy that I told the other guys in my class that he was not telling the truth. So I got assigned to Vietnam before anybody else did, just because that's what he could do. So I went to Vietnam.
Were you scared? Did you expect to come back? Did you?
That was a good question. We'd been married a year, then I had to go away for a year, but we didn't want to start a family because I didn't want to have Candace be a widow with a infant.
Yeah.
So I don't think scared's the right word. I was never scared. Even when I was there, I was never scared. I don't think I've ever been scared.
What? How can you have never been scared?
I think scared is like, I don't think I'm going to make this. You know, I went to, after high school, I went to the Colorado Outward Bound School. I'd never been in the mountains. And I did a 150-foot rappel. First time ever. It's like 15 stories building down, and you're going off the side of a cliff. And that was a little dicey. But I don't think I was scared. I think I was just concerned.
Yeah. So you were concerned going to Vietnam?
Yeah, I was concerned. I was concerned. But it's you know, if you ask somebody about their experience in war and in Vietnam or something like that, it's like looking through a keyhole at life. All you know is your little teeny experience. Ken Burns did this great series on Vietnam. It's a 10-part, 2 hours per part series. And we watched it, Candace and I watched it, and it was good. It was really good. But at the end of each 2-hour episode, they would say the number of GIs that had been killed up to that time. The episode in 1968, there was already 30,000 guys killed. I said, honey, we got 25,000 to go. I mean, when you look at Iraq, Afghanistan, you might remember in Afghanistan, there was that Chinook helicopter that got shot down with all the special forces guys. Like 30 guys died in one incident. And it's like, oh my gosh. Vietnam was 55.
Every day.
55,000 in 10 years. That's 5,000 a year divided by 50 weeks in a year. It's like 100 a week. Every week, week in and week out for 10 years.
Wow.
There's been more GIs died by suicide, like 3 times as many died by suicide as were killed during the war.
Mm.
These are veterans and these are confirmed suicides, like a note or somebody said, I'm gonna go kill myself. These aren't, hey, this guy was driving a car 120 miles an hour and hit a tree.
Yeah.
That doesn't count. Or drug overdoses, doesn't count. So there's a lot
more.
There's a lot of research that says it's a lot more. So the impact was really big. You went World War II, the average age of a GI was 26. Vietnam, 19. Big difference. Drug of choice, World War II, alcohol. Drug of choice in Vietnam, heroin. It was different. But I did some good things over there. I did some good things. So.
Yeah, are you grateful for that? I mean, are you grateful for that experience, or would you?
Yeah, no, I am.
Yeah.
I did my job. I did a good job. One of the things I did was we had about 225 men in my unit, which was way in the middle of nowhere. When you go to Vietnam, you land at Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base. Big air base, paved streets, traffic lights, officers club. It's like everybody's in khakis, like, hey, it's not bad. You go from there to Cam Ranh Bay, everybody's in combat fatigues and there's a lot of rifles and like, oh, this is a little different. And you keep going into the heart of darkness until you land in a helicopter in the middle of nowhere in a compound about the size of, like a high school campus. And there you are. And you're like, whoa, it's real serious.
Yeah.
And so.
It sounds terrifying, but you weren't scared.
Well, no, but.
You don't have, I mean, do you have much information? Are you getting letters from home? Are you hearing anything? Are you getting the news? You
get the Stars and Stripes.
Yeah.
And I would get, they had things called an aerogram. It was a one-page onion skin that you would write. No phones. I had one phone call with Candace the whole time.
Wow.
And it was like a minute. There was like 200 GIs in line waiting for the phone. And so you got 1 minute. You say, hey, Yanni, how you doing? I love you. I miss you, this, that, and then goodbye. And then next. So, but you had this one sheet of paper and you could write on it and then you would fold it and the sheet of paper became the envelope. And when I would get letters from Candace, she would number them because sometimes you get 6 at a time. Maybe you wouldn't get a letter for 3 or 4 weeks. And then you'd get a stack of them. And we learned very quickly that if she wrote on them, then I could read them in sequence as opposed to, this, I was really worried about this. I felt really sick or whatever. Oh, I'm better, but I read the better one. I didn't hear it. Anyway, but one of the things I did was about 60% of the unit hadn't even graduated from high school. So I knew that if you were a Vietnam veteran and went back and got out of the Army and you didn't even have a high school diploma, you were really behind the 8 ball. So I got accredited through Candace to administer the GED test. So I got the guys in my unit and I said, look, if you pass this test, you have a graduate equivalent degree, a GED degree.
Yeah.
And so when you go to an employer and they say, have you finished high school? You can say, yeah, I've got a high school diploma. So all these tests came over. They're all Scantron tests, number 2 pencil. It's supposed to be a 2-hour test. Took us about a week. And so we'd get in the mess hall and I'd pass out the tests and I'd say, okay, guys, here we go. ALT, I'm on question 7. I said, oh, good, and he said, I think the answer is C. What do you think? I said, well, it's your test, but there might be a better answer. ALT, I was just going to change it. I was just thinking to change it right now. What do you think? I'm thinking maybe it's B. And I'd say, well, that's a pretty good answer. I go with B, and
It just permeated through everybody. It would just
I just
word would get back.
100%. Everybody passed their GED test.
How many people was it?
Probably only 30 out
That's
of 200.
incredible.
I mean,
Yeah, but it changed those people's lives.
maybe. I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
Let me ask you about Candace. How long have you been married?
54 years. It's unbelievable.
How did you do that?
It was,
Been married 54 years.
yeah. She came to this little town of 800 people in Culver, Indiana, the summer of '68. If you were in high school, you could go there and go to the Naval Academy, learn how to fly planes or whatever, and take academic classes.
Yeah.
And they decided to go co-ed and start in the summer. So they hired college women to be counselors in the dormitory. My older sister, Lucy, came back to Culver to be a counselor. And Candace, and she was my sister Lucy's roommate. I was working on the farm, 6:30 to 4:30, and then I played basketball every night and worked out and everything. And Lucy said, "Oh, my roommate's really cute. You should take her." I said, "Lucy, I don't have time for that. I'm really busy." But I finally said, "Okay, I'll take her out." It was unbelievable. I had never, ever in my whole life.
Which app? So it wasn't through an app?
Was it through an app? A nap? No, it wasn't through an app. So we went to dinner and we saw the movie The Odd Couple with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. And at family dinner the next day, my grandmother was living. They said, well, and Lucy was home for a Sunday dinner. And they said, well, how was your date last night? I said, I'm going to marry Candace.
That fast?
That's what
Yeah, you knew.
I knew
immediately.
It was so unbelievable. And it's been that way absolutely ever since. It's just been, she, later as our kids, when Sam was in the 8th grade, she went back to grad school, got her master's in family therapy, and was a therapist for 20 years. And I joke and I said, she's had one client for like 54 years. He's coming around. She's kind of working on it a bit. But it's been nourishing, exhilarating, fantastic. And
been hard?
I'm sorry?
Has it been hard?
Hard?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, relationships are hard, right? Not this one?
Not this one. We've never.
Well, why is that?
Well, first of all, we've never had a crossword, ever.
Never gotten in an argument?
Never. And it's not because we're just, milk toast or roll over or whatever. No, it's why would you, if there's one person on earth that you don't want to disappoint,
yeah,
and that you don't want to upset or make angry, if there's one person, I mean, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah. All the rest of them, like, hey, your boss or whatever, I mean, whatever. But
you've had other arguments with other people, just not your wife.
Oh, yes, I have. Yes. What don't you understand? I mean, I've been in the real estate business for 40 years and negotiated probably 1,000 leases more, probably leases with big companies, attorneys, and lawsuits and everything. And
but you wouldn't bring that. You wouldn't bring that home. You wouldn't bring that.
No. I never traveled. Our kids all went to Palo Alto High School.
You didn't travel on purpose, like you deliberately tried.
I didn't need to. When I first worked at Syntex out of the business school, but then I went to work with my partners, and I was able to get up from my desk and 3:30 in the afternoon, go watch a water polo or a soccer game or basketball, and then go right back to work. It was fantastic. I never commuted. It took me 10 minutes to get to the office.
You never argued about money or about kids or
no,
nothing.
Money's easy.
How is that?
People have asked us, what about budgeting? I said, let me tell you the secret to budgeting. It's like an hourglass. As long as you're putting in sand in the top faster than it's going out the bottom, you're okay. The minute it goes out faster than you're putting it in, you got to fix that right now. You can't say, oh, let's do this, and I'm not going to pay this bill this month, and we'll do it with a credit card, and I'll wait until next month. No. As soon as the sand in the hourglass, the money goes out faster than it's coming in, you got a big problem. You got to fix it right now. We always, we bought used cars and stuff like that, and
You made your own furniture.
made our own furniture. Took the kids camping. The first time we ever went to a resort, I think our youngest was a senior in high school. We went to Puerto Vallarta. We didn't like it, but that's the first time we'd ever gone.
You went on like a real vacation.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we were there and we, swam and had big dinners and stuff like that.
I mean, it's very different now, right? You feel like there's the things you see online and the people you see and the things you see, and it just this feeling of like, oh, I've got to go do that. We need that. And then you do it, and actually it doesn't really matter. You didn't need it, but there's this kind of
I read this thing about raising kids. They said that one of the biggest, I guess, inputs to kids is if they had chores.
Yeah.
Our kids always had chores.
Like what?
Well, we had green rugs in the second floor, and we had the boys section and the girls section. We vacuumed every day, every morning before school. And then I had to teach them because, Peter, and you could see in the carpet, where he had the star approach, which means you sit in the middle of the room and just turn around like this. And then when you're done, there's this pattern looks like a star. I said, no, Peter, come here. You go up and back, and then you scoot over and up and back and scoot over. That's how you vacuum. Oh, yes. Okay. And then there's the clean the bathroom on the weekend. All 5 kids sit around the toilet. Okay, we're all going to put our hands in the toilet bowl. Oh, I said, look, the water in the tank is clean. Flush it. We'll flush it. It's all clean. We're going to put our hands in there. Everybody's like, oh man, I can't believe I'm doing this. I said, is anybody going to throw up? Are you sick or anything? No. Take the Comet and a sponge, put the Comet around, you sponge it, you flush it a few times, wipe off the seat, go over to the sink, wash your hands. So we all did that. Is anybody going to throw up? Anybody sick? Anybody got a fever? That's how you wash the toilet. Okay. Who should wash the toilet? Mom or me or one of you? I mean, you choose. Who, not me. I said, that doesn't work. So the kids had to, then the boys, when Nathan was 14, you can't get a job when you're 14. I bought a power washer. It was a 11 horse Honda engine on this big spray. It weighed about 100 pounds. And high pressure washing, 3,000 PSI, clean bricks and everything. That machine probably earned $100,000 because it went through my 3 boys, and then it went through a friend's, all their boys, and another friend. I finally gave it away, but I mean, Nathan made, maybe $5,000 his first summer as a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Just spray washing all day long.
I mean, it's a big thing now where just like making sure kids sort of have hard things to do, that there's, that life is so much easier today than it's ever been. And kids need something to, they need things to help them learn how to work.
And learn how to do it right. The boys would spray. I said, okay. And we started here. I said, okay, look, see where you hit the dirt with the high pressure spray? It sprayed the dirt all over here.
Yeah.
Looks terrible. So, you put a piece of plywood right there when you're next to the dirt, goes against it. How's that look? And I guess it's better. Yeah, okay. And see where you made the marks? You got to erase them. So you have to teach them. You have to teach them how to do it. And then once they know, because, if somebody doesn't perform, it's due to 2 things, either a lack of motivation or a lack of training. Because if somebody's motivated and they're trained, they're going to do a good job.
Yeah.
If they're trained, but they're unmotivated, they're not going to do a good job. If they're motivated, but they don't know but they're not trained, they're not going to do a good job. So if they're trained and motivated, they do a good job. It's easy. It's pretty simple.
At 76, like what brings you the most joy? Now, like what do you like?
You mean other than just
Other than anything, like where do you find the most joy in your life at this point?
just being with kids and grandkids and being with Candace and family?
Yeah.
Family, serving, doing things for others. It was interesting. I was thinking back to this motivation thing. So when I was in Vietnam, I had a bunch of different responsibilities in this little unit. And we had about 30 trucks. Maybe 4 of them worked. And the others were deadlined. It means they didn't even work. They were for one reason or another. And this is when Captain Kraber was still there, and he got frustrated. So he assigned me to the motor pool. I was out in our supply yard, and there's this 55-gallon drum of high gloss jet black paint. You with me? 55-gallon drum. Now, when I was growing up back in Indiana, what farmers did over the winter was they painted their tractors. That's what you do. I mean, there's 2 feet of snow out there. You can't do anything. What are you going to do all day if you're a farmer? You're going to paint your tractor. You're going to get it all ready for spring planting and plowing and all that. So I knew how to use a spray gun. I'd paint it a lot. So I got the guys in the motor pool, and I said, we're gonna paint these trucks. So, Lieutenant, we don't give a darn about these trucks. Probably different language. We don't really care about these trucks. I said, well, we're going to paint them, but the only paint we got is high gloss jet black. They're like, Lieutenant, you can't be painting an Army truck high gloss jet black. I said, yeah, what are they going to do? Send us to Vietnam worker, right? So we steam cleaned the trucks. We painted them high gloss jet black. Our only protection in the big days of the war, there might be 150 trucks in a convoy. Helicopters hovering overhead. Every 5th truck's a gun truck, which means it has a armored personnel carriage welded to the back of the 5-ton truck with quad 50s or, miniguns or whatever. Big armament. When I was there, we'd have 5 trucks in the convoy. No protection, no nothing. It was the Wild West. It would be like driving from here to Monterey in the middle of enemy territory. And our only protection was speed. So we took the governors off. So in an Army truck, if you push the gas all the way to the floor, it's going to go 45 miles an hour, period. Because it's got a governor that makes sure the engine won't go faster than that. Take those off. We painted them high gloss jet black. Then we had some guys that knew calligraphy, and I said, we're going to put the name of the mechanic and the driver on the door. All of a sudden, I'm like, man, this is awesome. They had pinstripes on the white around the wheels. They were gorgeous because we wanted people in the Quinh Nhan Binh Dinh province to know that if you saw those black trucks coming, you better make way because we're not slowing down. When you go through a village, if you slow down, I mean, really slow, the South Vietnamese would jump on the trucks and start throwing whatever's in the back, whatever supplies are, just throwing it off.
Sure.
If you stopped, it's over. And then now there's a crowd of 100 people. In front and back, you can't even move.
And all your stuff's gone.
All your stuff's gone,
Yeah.
Whatever it was. Even as you're driving through, there'd be guys on motorcycles, and the guy in the back would jump onto the side of the truck with bolt cutters, and they would cut the battery cables it's not under the hood, they're on the side, and throw the batteries off on the ground so they could have like a power supply, have lights at night. I mean, so you had to really think about that. So all of a sudden, after about a month and a half, every truck ran. They were beautiful, high gloss, jet black, and they were fast.
That's awesome.
And everybody was motivated. These guys were like, man, if we were going to run a convoy, somebody, dude, I am driving. You are not driving my truck. And the mechanics are like, this is my truck. I used to ask them, like, you'd have to inspect. I'd say, is the truck, because a 2.5 ton truck has 2 wheels in the front and 2 sets of dualies in the back. So eight tires. I said,
Yeah.
Are these tires good? Lieutenant, these are good. I kick the inside tire, not the outside, but the inside tire. If it was soft, I'd say, wait a minute, that tire's flat. I can't run. Army truck, if a tire goes flat, you got 7 more. But if that one's flat and this one's flat, now we got a problem. I thought you told me that. Hey, Lieutenant, sorry.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of the recurring theme of your whole life. It's just you're always fixing stuff. Because I know, having lived by you for 15 years, it's like if somebody needs something, like you're the guy. You sort of drop anything. I remember a huge branch, like it was like a tree fell. It's this massive eucalyptus tree fell in my yard one time. Almost hit my kids, and
I remember that.
I think I just told you about it. Said, hey, do you have something I can use? The next thing I know, like you're in the yard, and it was like done. It was like taken care of. And I mean, I know like there's probably 100 people that could tell that same story. And
I got a compliment once from one neighbor, Jim Fox. He had been scoutmaster and everything, and he had taken his family to Utah, and they had an old Suburban that somebody had given them, and it broke down, I think, in Winnemucca. And they couldn't get a part, and they had to spend 2 days.
yeah,
And because he was supposed to be, I said, Jim, what happened? He said, well, my truck broke down. The Suburban broke down. I said, why didn't you call me? I would have come get it. I said, why didn't you call me? He said, I knew if I called you, you would come. And I didn't want you to do that, so I didn't call you. But I would have. I mean, what are you going to drive to Winnemucca and back? That's not a big deal.
how far is Winnemucca?
Probably 7 hours.
That's a big deal to most people. Who is the human being or human beings that you most admire?
Oh, I'd say Candace for sure.
Your wife.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Derek, if you just, people just love to spend time with her.
Yeah.
I mean, she's closed her counseling practice, but people call, come back, they want to tune up, they want to visit her. She's unbelievable, unbelievable. A lot of people think she's not, that she's kind of not passive, but really gentle. But inside,
She's fierce.
spring steel. Not fierce, but spring steel. If it's a matter of principle, she's not going to compromise on that.
Yeah.
She's not going to budge an inch.
What's the hardest thing you've ever dealt with in your life?
Being away from her for that year. It's interesting. There's some things I really love to do. When we first got married, I was qualified to fly helicopters.
Yeah.
And I was all set to go to flight. They call it rotary wing school because a helicopter is really a big wing. It's not like a propeller. And she said, oh, honey, please don't do that. Because those guys really, I think it's like 1,800 helicopters. I mean, it's really a little iffy.
Yeah.
And she said, please don't do that. So I said, okay, I won't do that. Now you fast forward during COVID when I had this logging accident. She said, you just can't do any more chainsaw work. She said, every time you went to the Santa Cruz Mountains for the last 40 years, I've just been scared to death. Every time. And I never said anything, but I said, okay, I won't do that anymore. Is there anything else? She said, well, I've done the Alcatraz swim from Alcatraz to San Francisco.
How many times have you done that?
Probably 8 or 9, I don't know. Anyway, she said, well, when you do the Alcatraz swim, I'm just so nervous. And it's really safe. I mean, they had maybe a guy get hurt. There's no shark attacks. Although they do call it the Shark Fest.
Oh, it's like a 1.5 mile swim in open water. I mean, it's 2 miles. Yeah, I mean, no, it's not. You're saying it's safe,
You
but
should YouTube. There's a YouTube video of shark attack at Alcatraz. It's made by this like 10-year-old kid. And there's a seal swimming right off Alcatraz. His class had gone to Alcatraz Island
they're filming it.
to walk around. And this kid is filming this seal. All of a sudden, this great white. There's blood everywhere. Blood everywhere. And all these kids are screaming, "Oh, my. And you hear this kid say, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." It's a great video. And this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. But so I said, okay, I don't need to swim Alcatraz anything. So that's, so no helicopter, no chainsaw, no Alcatraz. I said, is there anything else? She said, when you ride the loop, the Alpine loop on your bike, it's about a 25 or 30 mile bike ride. I used to do it all. I probably put 6,000 miles on my bike. She said, it really makes me nervous because people get hit. I said, okay, let's just get a Peloton.
Yeah.
But I do have an e-bike that I ride in the Baylands, but you're not going to hit by a car. There's no cars in the Bayland.
Yeah.
So I said, honey, I could live a happy, fulfilled life without those things. So that was easy. Easy to give.
Avoid the conflict, not worth the conflict.
Wouldn't even be, there was no conflict because I'm not conflicted. I'm like, it's easy.
How do you measure your life?
I don't know that I measure it. A lot of people, I mean, business has been, I did a lot of business in real estate. I'll tell you a couple of things I learned. I used to go, my parents would go to Florida for 6 months, actually 5 months and 29 days, because if you're there 6 months, you have to pay Florida taxes. It's all calculated. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. If you go to Tequesta, Florida, on the 30th of April, the interstate going north is like a football game got out.
It's fact.
Delta 88s, Lincolns, Cadillacs, big cars, Pennsylvania, New York, Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, license plates, Illinois. One of the husband or wife is driving, the other one's like sleeping. They've got all their hats and everything in the back. So I used to go to Florida and drive my parents to Indiana, and then in the fall I'd fly to Indiana and drive them back. Just, take 3 days. So my dad, when I was in Florida, he would say, he always went to dinner about 5 o'clock, blue plate special, eat at 5 o'clock. He'd say, see that guy over there? He was the head of United States Steel. And I'd look over and there'd be a guy in a plaid pants. He's kind of like this, and he's got a napkin under here, and he's kind of drooling all over. He was the president of United States Steel. I said, oh, wow. See that guy over there? He was the chairman of Boeing Aircraft. He's over there like, all these famous, big time industrial people. They're in their 80s. They're just jacked over. They're just messed up, and and like, oh, he's the chairman of, Goldman Sachs. Wow. And he's sitting there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, drooling on his napkin. And he's going to be dead in 2 or 3 or 5 years. And then what? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, that's not what it's about. So I learned that pretty early on, that there was that other phrase, I don't know who said it, but the whale only gets harpooned when he spouts. So not a good idea to spout, So what is your greatest accomplishment or whatever you ask me? I raising my family. But I mean, I've made leases with, 2 guys out of Stanford. One was named Bryn and the other one's Page. The first lease was Google, eBay. Met with those guys, like, what do you do? Well, we have an online auction. I don't know, what's that? I mean, it's like a camera and a guy say, I hear 23, 23. Do I hear 25, 25? Do I hear 30, 30, 30? I got a bid for 30. Do I hear 30? I said, that kind of auction? They said, no, 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 you don't understand. I said, no, I don't understand. I made a first lease with a guy named Scott McNeely, Sun Micro, SUN, Stanford University Network. We ended up leasing them 700,000 feet. Then it was interesting. We went up to, I had all these buildings. They had about 9 or 11 buildings. They're all staggered in the leases. I want a 10-year extension. They said, we're not going to do that. I said, really? We want a 10-year lease extension. They said, no, we need more flexibility. We're not going to do that. I said, well, you should, check. This was the real estate guy. I said, check with the president and the CEO and the board just to make sure. Called me back and they said, we're not going to extend. I said, okay. In the meantime, I had rented on University Avenue, there was an ice cream store named Swenson's. Upstairs, there was a little teeny office. And there were some guys there and their company was named Intuit. And I put them in a little 20,000 foot building in Menlo Park. This is all we ever need. 20,000 feet. We're so happy.
Intuit.
Now they needed more space. So I showed them this space down in Shoreline where Sun Micro was. I said, you could take this building and step right through. I leased them the 700,000 feet. I signed this lease for 120,000 feet, 42,000, another 40, all stepped in.
Yeah.
Sun Micro calls me about 20 days or 30 days after I signed the lease. They said, hey, we've changed our mind. We want to stay. I said, I'm sorry, it's gone. What do you mean? I said, it's gone. I leased all your space. It's gone. No. Then they built out on Marsh Road.
The Facebook campus.
Now it is.
Yeah, but it was their campus originally.
They needed flexibility. They were in 42,000 foot buildings. They built 120,000 foot floor plates. I nicknamed it San Quentin. Sun Quentin. When Sun moved out there, I nicknamed it Sun Quentin. It got in the newspapers. They're like, hey, Sun moved into this campus. It's nicknamed Sun Quentin. I thought, yeah, And then they leased it to Facebook. It was vacant for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I go back to Fairchild Semiconductor and National Semiconductor and Lockheed Missiles in Space, all these guys, Hewlett Packard, all of them.
Yeah, it all was started, all those guys were started here. All those companies were started here.
There's a bookstore in Menlo Park called Kepler's. They used to, in the 70s, they would have a kind of a poster that was a genealogy of Silicon Valley. And they would have, Robert Noyce and Shockley and all the guys that invented all this stuff, and like 8 companies. And then the next year there would be 16 companies. And the next year there would be, 40. And they had all the names and all these different people and, Syntax and all the biological, pharmaceutical companies, everything. It was all right here. Activision. I did it,
Did you work with them?
Yeah, I leased Activision 120,000 feet. It was crazy. They raised, this is 83, 4, 5. They raised $100 million. 3 years later, it's gone. They owed me, I think they owed me like $100,000. I met with them. I said, look, you owe me this money? Hey, we can't. We'll give you stock. What? What do you mean you give me stock? Well, we'll give you the stock, we'll give you these shares in stock, and this is what it's trading.
Basically equivalent to what they owed you. They gave you in stock.
I put it in
it's worthless.
Well, I put it in a filing cabinet. I just thought.
Yeah.
About 10 years later, I see an article about some game thing that is Activision. I said, what? And they had morphed into some other outfit.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Stayed alive.
Yeah, and so I look up and they're trading OTC. I dribbled the stock out like every 3 or 4 weeks, 5,000 shares at a time. We got all our money back. Everything was good. And Activision,
That's still around.
It's still around.
Yeah.
Apple Computer, Next.
You work with Next Computers?
Yeah, after Steve Jobs got fired and they brought in Scully, he moved in a little 10,000-foot building I had. I met Steve and I call him Steve. Actually, I talked to the real estate guy and I said, I'd like to meet Steve Jobs. He said, excuse me, it's not his name. I said, oh. He said, no, it's Stephen Jobs. I said, oh, okay. Well, he's like an entrepreneur. And he said, no, he's not an entrepreneur. He's an industrialist. I said, you mean like Carnegie and Mellon and those guys? Yes, that's what I said, okay, okay with you. I mean.
Did you meet her?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. We once, years later, I had this big office complex in San Mateo, and we had this car that was in the parking lot. It was really a nice car. It was a Porsche. I don't know what number. It's like $100,000 car. It'd been there for like 4 weeks. Had leaves on it and, dirt on the windshield and stuff. I said, I mean, I got to. So I ran the plates on it through a friend in the police department in San Mateo. They said, oh, that's registered to Mr. Steve Jobs. I said, okay. By this time, he's at Pixar. It did Pixar or something. I call over there, hey, can I talk to Mr. Jobs or his secretary? Secretary comes on. I said, I introduced myself and I said, we've got a car here that's been here in our parking lot for 4 weeks. And I think it belongs to Steve Jobs. And she said, oh, okay. Hey, we'll send somebody over and get it. He couldn't find it. He must have met with somebody in your building and then taken a cab to the airport. And we didn't know where it was. He didn't know where it was. He couldn't remember where it was. I said, okay, well,
we got it.
It's here. We got it. It's okay. You come by. We'll give him his car back, whatever. I mean, just really interesting people. But
yes, there's something special about this spot. There's something unique in the world about this 50-mile stretch between San Francisco and San Jose.
It's unbelievable. If you go back, it was all apricot orchards and fruit orchards.
Yeah.
In Period and Arriaga, so during the gold rush, there was a lot of Chinese labor that came and worked in the gold mines. 1849, 48, the 49ers, the 50s, stuff like that. And then that finished.
Yeah.
Well, then Abraham Lincoln decides to build the Continental Railroad. And, Charlie Crocker and, those guys, Stanford, Mr. Stanford, the big four. And so it was the Chinese labor that dug the railroad through the Sierras, through the mountains. Well, after that, they had money and they would just buy all these little properties. And Dick Peary would figure out, the title companies couldn't figure out who owned what. But he'd go down and talk to everybody. And so they started
connecting dots and turning this dots these orchards
into tilt-up buildings. Silicon Valley explodes. And, if you weren't stupid, you could make money.
You did Google's first lease?
Yeah.
The first office that Google had?
Yeah.
Where was that?
It was at Shoreline, 21,000 square feet.
Kind of similar to where the HQ is, generally.
Yeah. I remember when I leased a building to Scott McNeely, a 42,000-foot building. He called me a month later and he said, Greg, your building sucks. It's terrible. It's just horrible. And I said, well, let me come down there. I walked in and it's all open offices.
Yeah.
Shoulder to shoulder. And everybody's got a computer. In the back of the computer, there's a hole about like this. There's a fan in that. And it's blowing hot air out. I said, Scott, you got 100 people here and everyone's got a hairdryer. Of course it's hot in here. I mean, this is built for, standard parking's 4 per 1,000. On a 22,000 foot floor, that's 88 people. You got 150 people in here, shoulder to shoulder, and everyone's running a hairdryer. Of course it's hot. We can put in more air conditioning, but you're going to have to pay for it, So.
Yeah, they went from like 0 to 100 million, I think, in like the first 3 years, something like that. It was just growing like crazy,
We just built buildings for them and put them in there. And I mean, it was just, but Stanford Research Park, I mean, we took over a vacant property that Shockley literally baked the first chips in ovens. Thank goodness it wasn't on the National Historic Registry or something, but he later on won the Nobel Prize, all that. Then he kind of went off, got into eugenics and vitamin C or something. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. He kind of went beyond his expertise, shall we say.
Yeah.
But wow. I mean,
it's incredible to be around those people at that time and to be, part of that. And, just to be here in the Valley during that time, which was like kind of the Wild Wild West of tech.
I did a lease with Alta Vista.
Yeah.
Search engine.
Sure.
Which was a subsidiary, I think, of DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation. Like, what do you guys do? Well, we search engine. We're like, what are you looking for? I don't even know what a search engine is. Well, you can just that. And then Google came along and Alta Vista. I mean, Xerox Park in the Stanford Research Park. Originally it was called the Stanford Industrial Park, but that's kind of the word industrial doesn't have the right cachet. Then it became the Stanford Research Park. Xerox Park invented the mouse, touchscreen TV, touchscreen computer, all that stuff. They never monetized it. They never. American business is really good at scaling up. It's not that good at coming up with the first thing. That's why around here, these people that are inventive and they're like, they just got the juice flowing. And then once they get it, then a bigger fish can say, okay, I can make 100,000 of those. Really, or I can make 1 million of them. I remember when video games first came out, they're like, okay, we're going to launch this product and the sales in the first 4 days are going to be like 180 million or $380 million.
From zero. Yeah.
Like the first 3 days. And then the movie industry is like, wait a minute. These guys are making a game and it's worth like 3 blockbuster movies in a week.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us in your amazing garage. I feel like, there's a lot of special garages in Silicon Valley. This is probably not one people were aware of, but there's been a lot of special things happen and made in here. And
nobody's aware of this. When I was a little boy, my grandfather had a garage. He didn't make stuff in it, but his garage was full of all this stuff. And I remember going in and I'd say, oh, there's a piece of, don't, that piece of wire, that's what I hold the throttle open on the lawnmower. Okay. There'd be a stick over there. That's what I use. I use that stick to hold open the lid to the ice chest. There's a can over there. No, that's the can I use to hunt night crawlers before we go fishing. Everything in the garage had its own little deal, its own little purpose, its own little thing. And that's, growing up on the farm, I mean, that's where I learned to weld and do all this stuff. And I was making deliveries with 18 tons of wheat, when I was 16 years old, drive to Illinois or Southern Indiana or whatever. Never thought twice about it. So it's, but I'm not tired. I'm 76, but.
We worked out today, so.
I did. I did today. And
you swam?
Tomorrow.
You swim tomorrow?
Swim tomorrow, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us.
Will you still be my friend, even after this time?
We're always going to be friends, but hopefully you'll still be friends with me after this.
When we go to lunch, what's the rule?
Well, you always pay.
Why? Until when?
Well, until I make it.
No, until all your kids are done with college. Okay, when do you get to pay?
Well, I love going to lunch with you. That's one of my favorite things to do. Over the last 10 years, we go to lunch every couple of months, and yeah, I've learned so much from it. So hopefully some of the people that watch this get some of the things that I've learned over the last 10 years. They'll pull that out.
You're kind. You're kind. You know, life
But you got to let me pay.
No, not until everybody's out of school. Then that's about another. See, well, I'm 90.
Then I can pay. That's when I'll be ready to pay.
Derek, so what would you like? I'll have some polenta. That's about all I can chew because I don't have any.
You're the guy drooling. That's you. The guy drooling. The
right.
Boeing chairman.
That's me. That's right. I'm going to keep swimming though. Got to keep working out. Got to keep going. Just because. That's what, life is really, really good. Amazing. Anyway, thanks, my brother.
My friend.
Good to be together.
Love you. Thank you.
Divot.
On next week's episode.
If you expose yourself to negativity, that also brings negative or bad performance. It starts creating negative thoughts in your own head. So think if you're in a team and you have individuals that are saying negative things out loud, what that does is starts infecting other team members. They start having negative thoughts. And if they start saying negative things out loud, it creates this downward spiral.